We welcome to this legacy author interview Stuart Grauer, the author of A Parasympathetic School System in the winter issue of Legacy Transformation and Action, and the author of a soon-to-be published masterpiece, The Way to Pancho's Kitchen. Stuart, welcome.
Thank you, Walter. I appreciate that. And I appreciate your calling what I did a masterpiece.
It's
It's interesting to reflect on what that means.
it's such a work of the heart. And as we've worked in it together, and it's just become such a statement for who you are, the work you've accomplished, and the legacy you've built to hand off to your readers and say, here it is, take it and run with it. Let's continue this. So that's my intention in saying masterpiece.
Uh-huh. It's interesting that what it means to me is when you give up everything else and completely immerse yourself in something far beyond what you originally intended. And you
Yeah.
just go deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
And I just want to say that in writing that, um, it, if it's a masterpiece, that would be a wonderful thing. It's not up to me to say. But and also the article on parasympathetic school campuses
Yes.
that came out
Yes.
of it. Um, sometimes sometimes it was such immersion that it was maybe off balance. Sometimes I felt at the end of days that I almost had to be scraped off the chair with a spatula. I have never, I've always believed in work as an immersive experience
Sure.
and never believed in a work-life separation.
Right.
But this one was extreme.
Well, it was, and much like our careers, it was a journey. It wasn't something that we just sat down and, punched it out and said, "Here it is. It's good. Let's go." Um, and I think that's a testament to how reflective you are, how much your heart is in this, and how much this is a labor of love. So kudos to you for being open to the journey.
Well, thank you. And I guess that probably pulls us right back to going into a career like this and founding a school. You know, that's where the journey really starts.
Yes.
My school founding didn't start with any particular chronology. It was more some kind of an invisible thread that I knew I was following, even though I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
For instance, I was fired from my first teaching job. But
Yeah.
not only fired, I was told that it was not going to be a wise move for me to go into the field of teaching and education. I
Wow.
was not cut out for it.
Yeah.
And I think that that may have had more to do with where the field was going than where I was going.
Exactly.
Uh, and that's not a criticism of the field at all either.
No.
I didn't leave that school, and at that point, I said to my dad, who died soon after that, "Well, I'm just
Yeah.
going to be a writer. Then I can teach 1,000 people."
Right.
And I started, and then I actually had the first two articles that I wrote right after that firing,
Yeah.
both back to back, published in the New York Times.
Wow.
Very unusual for a 25-year-old.
Yes.
And but then I got an offer of a part-time job at a school, and without any decision making, just following that invisible thread, I just, yeah, of course, I'll just take that. I have no idea why I took that, but even that, I remember after 2 years getting fired. And the reason I was getting fired. I didn't say got fired. I was getting
Right.
fired is
Yeah.
because my students did not place well enough on the New York State Regents examination.
Right.
And lest people think that the problems of standardization and over testing and reductionist testing is now. It's been around for many decades,
Yeah.
as you probably know.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, but anyway, what happened is I wrote a lengthy letter because I always got out of everything by writing, and I still do, um, to the assistant principal and the principal of the school, and I said, I understand that my kids did not perform well on the New York State Regents, but here is what they did.
Yeah.
And I had orchestrated full school assemblies. I had done off the radar field trips. I
Yep.
had brought in guest speakers all year. I'd taken them sailing and hiking. And they hadn't really tracked that very well. And as they were reading the letter in front of me, they were going, huh, huh, huh. And I actually did get my job back.
Huh.
Great testament to them. They never said, no, you need to have your kids do better on the regions. They just said,
Right.
oh, well, thank you for explaining. That
Yeah.
makes sense. And I
Yeah.
was having wonderful conversations with my students.
Yeah.
And then actually even got tenure at that school, but at the same, almost simultaneously, this invisible thread took me to Switzerland,
Right.
where I knew the schools were small and connected. And I thought, a teacher isn't a bureaucrat. Teachers are maestros over there, and I was treated with enormous respect and met numerous people in giving conference presentations for ECIS around Europe. I met
Yeah.
beautiful people who had
Yeah.
founded schools.
Yeah.
Wow. That was a knock on the side of the head.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I'm not sure if you asked how I founded the school, but you did
Please.
ask how the journey began, and that's a little bit of it.
Well, I love the notion of the invisible thread because isn't that where the romance of the journey lies that we don't know? And we're following what I kind of Joseph Campbellish call following your bliss. And
Huh?
if you don't, then you do become a bureaucrat, a bean counter, or someone who's trying to get test scores up, but missing the greater part of the journey, which is to discover in yourself what you're there for and then impart that to students. And that is your journey.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Uh, um, I, I I love Joseph Campbell, as I think we all do.
Oh, yeah.
But I have to say that it doesn't always feel like bliss. And I think it might,
No.
a redefinition of bliss for me is more um, pursuing curiosity.
Yeah.
And I think the bliss requires enormous courage. And I
Mhm.
feel like too many of us want our jobs so badly that we stop following bliss and start following required curriculum. And we need required curriculum, but we also need balance.
Yeah.
And people start to become, and you already said the word, bureaucrats.
Yep.
And through no fault of their own, they're, when got my first job, I was amazed. Every
Right.
job I've ever got, I've been amazed, and I don't want to risk that, even though I certainly have
No.
risked my jobs more than other people, but
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, and started over a number of times. But the thing that disables our bliss is what a lot of people say is required. They call it work-life separation.
Right.
And to me, that is creates a unnecessary duality, so that at work we're at work and we're following these guidelines, and then we go home and we're our real person.
Right.
And I love people who just naturally don't do that. And I don't know
Yeah.
whether it's a decision or if it's just the way people are, or and I hope
Right.
certainly that's the thing that I want to teach my students and teach the teachers who I teach
Yeah.
more than anything,
Yep.
that this is about the reality of relationships and the reality of who you're becoming and the process of discovery. And whether you're a large public school or a small private or emerging learning pod,
Mhm.
all of those models have the same access to courage it's going to take to prioritize what our students really need, which is listening. And ultimately, that means love.
It's so true. And everything you just said just needs to be said and needs to be heard because if you just jump into education today and you assume a lot of things based on circumstances today, you miss the whole potential to take this adventure and make it your own, and then leave for those that come after you a sense of possibilities. a sense of better. And
Yeah,
yeah,
it's so the hardest thing in giving conference presentations, sometimes teachers ask questions that are a little bit upsetting because the only answer I have for them sometimes has been, um, you'll have to risk your job.
right?
And they may not be willing to do that.
No.
And some of them do the other thing, which may be worse, which is quit and stay on the job, which means
Yes.
that they give up their actual self and the thing that drew them to the profession, and
Yeah.
they've let go of the thread, and they're just performing their duties and responsibilities. It leads me back to a story I had when I was first found in the Grauer School back, 35 years ago.
Yeah.
But I've heard the story come up a lot this year. Other people going through this same story, and the
Huh.
story. So it's still happening. And here it is. I was teaching at several local universities and founding
Yeah.
the school because I needed to put food on the table as well, and a
Yeah.
number of other education professors were fascinating. This crazy guy is starting a school, and they were all gathering around. They came over the school site, which was a borrowed storefront, and we
Right.
got into this brainstorming session. And we were saying, teachers have become bureaucrats, and they're not teachers. It's not the right word for a teacher. Maybe what should we call them? Because teachers ruined. Maybe guide, and maybe mentor,
Right.
and maybe leader. And
Yeah.
you recognize, Walter, all of these same
Yeah.
conversations are still going on. And at the end of it, I just said, we had a half an hour conversation on this, and I said, what about teacher?
Right. Right.
So I guess it's not about changing the name, it's about reclaiming the name.
Thank you.
Uh,
Thank you.
and, uh, and that means you also maybe give up your private life because your private
Yeah.
life is your personal life and your professional life
Yes.
and your connected life and your spiritual life. You
Yeah.
can't sever those, and I don't think. Who am I to
I would
say?
agree.
But I think that's the real world. The real world we live in has real people that are functioning in accordance with a unified um, identity.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, give us some background for those watching the interview that have read the article and are looking for the book. Give us some background on the significance of Pancho's Kitchen as a reference point for you in the title.
Oh, okay. So, sure. I'll talk about how that came to be. It
Yeah.
wasn't my idea.
Yeah.
I mean, as I've already mentioned, my entire life, I've been a teacher writer, and those have
Yeah.
both been synthesized, and I've published many articles, even before I started teaching.
Hmm.
Um, but right around the time I was starting on a succession plan and
Hmm.
realized that the Grauer School, couldn't be just me. And it was kind of young and bright people, younger, more energetic, brighter people were coming up the ranks, nipping
Right.
at my heels, and I couldn't stop them. And
Yeah.
I was moving into more of a legacy situation, and school only you're only a leader if you have followers, and if your life's work goes away when you're gone,
Yeah.
you haven't been a leader. You have
Yeah.
actually failed, no matter how great your school may have appeared at the time. So
Yeah.
at that point, I was trying to cede power over to a board, a nonprofit board, because we had made the Grauer School nonprofit.
Yeah.
And entrepreneurs naturally do not do very well
Right.
with governance bodies because, and so a lot of Pancho's Kitchen would address that issue. How are you going to retain your freedom but still have your succession? And in doing that, some of the sympathetic trustees at the Grauer School said, "Why don't you write something like an HP?" They have the HP way, and long after the founders of it have gone away and died, everybody understands the founding ethos.
Yeah.
And said to them, that's way too much responsibility and much too hard to do
Yeah.
to um, write down all these principles that I've spent, decades living. a lot of those things are invisible threads,
Yeah.
um, but I'll try.
Yeah.
And I wrote out, I waited a few weeks, and one weekend, soon after that, 80 pages spooled out, and I
Yeah.
had my basic book, and
Yeah.
it was like involuntary. It just the ink bled off the pen,
Yeah.
and so I right away gave it to some key people.
Yeah.
And this was going to become a model for how to write this thing. I would write a draft and give it to key people, and the ones that didn't help said, "Isn't that lovely, Stuart?" And one or two of them that helped said, "That part's terrible. This one, Bull, we can let go of that. What are you talking
Right.
about? And
Right.
to those people, I love compliments, but the people that gave me criticism are the true authors of this book.
Yeah.
So anyway, I took this draft back, and my wife and I had booked a trip on the north and south rims of the Grand Canyon, and of course I
Yeah.
had a. Uh-oh, sorry.
Oop.
Um, uh, and my whole life as an educator had to do with taking expeditions and taking students away on
Yeah.
expeditions. I'm sorry
Yeah. Yeah.
that on expeditions, and she's a painter, and so we booked a trip with a bunch of oil painters going up and down the full length, 8 days on the Colorado River. And I said to the artist, Cody DeLong,
Yeah.
is it okay if I'm a painter by writing, and when you show every night,
Yeah.
I'll just read? And he said that would be great.
Yeah.
And we floated down, and I had this manuscript. Floated down for a few days and finally landed on this one landing called Pancho's Kitchen, which is a little more than halfway down when you're doing the full Grand Canyon float.
Okay.
It was a spectacular night, and of course the Grand Canyon is incomparable in the whole world. And I've traveled as
Yeah.
much as about anybody I know, and
Yeah.
it's amazing. And I lied back in my sleeping bag and looked up at the stars, and thinking about all of the principles I was trying to put into words
Yeah.
as a leader for future
Yeah.
leaders, and
Yeah.
everything was right there in the stars, and everything was right there in the gurgling river, and all of the principles for leadership were right there in nature. And I thought, that's my book. I need to show people that this is real, that leadership principles aren't bureaucracies or policies or theories, that they've always existed right in nature, right before us. So I spent, and that was after a year of writing, and I've spent the next 7 years um, transferring everything I know, articulating everything I know
Yeah.
as a force of nature, so
Yeah.
that it feels natural and beautiful to future leaders, and so that the book really can be a legacy, and it won't be outlived by things like pandemics
Right.
and AI.
Right.
And no matter what happens, we will always have these pure principles.
Was just fascinating. Wonderfully fascinating. Um, well, you just mentioned some current and recent events that are having impact on schools. And in general, schools are trying to play catch up right now with a society that's quickly morphing and evolving at a very fast speed. Well, surely there are things that from our last century that we should hold on to, even as we're changing and evolving and trying to keep up with everything that's happening. When you kind of look at the scope of your career, what would you say to educators today? What are the things worth keeping from the industrial age that we don't want to lose while we're trying to keep up so quickly with remote learning, personalized learning, AI infused learning? What would you want to let educators know when they hear this interview?
Sure. And you and I have spent the last few minutes talking about human scale learning versus
Hmm.
bureaucracy and machine scale learning,
Yep.
and the heart of everything I'm doing in the past and wanting for the future is it's just a basic conviction that unlike training and unlike programming, real education happens at the human scale. So you're referencing today's news, and it's all similar. Massive AI infrastructure, vast, scary capital flows, dark
Yeah.
money, oligarchic
Yep.
influencers and influences and systems moving faster than everyday people and teachers and parents can understand, and that
Yes.
educational leaders. So that's machine scale power. And
Yep.
so people have to start asking, especially in small and entrepreneurial schools that
Yep.
you see exploding now, I wonder why,
Yep.
what
Right.
happens when systems grow so large that individuals, especially teachers and students, lose
Mhm.
agency and they
Right.
become almost victims in the system. Well, one of the things that happens, of course, is anxiety and depression. So look at the
Yeah.
data right now. What happens
Yes.
when scale outplaces discernment? In other words, what
Right.
happens when things grow faster than our wisdom about how to use them?
Yeah.
So AI is the perfect example, of course, and I know how to use AI. I love using AI. I
Yes.
exercise my curiosity. It doesn't give me answers. It feeds my curiosity, and that's what I
Yeah.
want for my students. So,
Of course.
but if that doesn't happen, then efficiency and bureaucracy displace humanity, and the whole point of why we became teachers, they displace the primacy of relationships. Um, so technology is not something that we unleash. Technology is something we bring into the schools that can really serve flourishing, which I might call curiosity or learning by discovery, not redefining it. And teachers absolutely can redo this. So
Yeah.
we're in a moment here
Yeah.
where it seems like scale and speed seem to be accelerating. We almost have to shield them out. They're
Yeah.
coming, they're streaming at us, and but every teacher walks into a classroom, and every
Mhm.
teacher gets there before their kids, and there's this empty, beautiful space, and they can make that classroom a place to restore grounding and moral imagination and connection.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, as happened to me in my very first two jobs, you may have
Yep.
to risk your job
Yep.
to do that. So it's not an easy ask,
No.
but it is an easy ask if you're going into the field of education and being a teacher um, as a part of your whole identity and not as a job. So more than ever, we're not going to
Yeah.
get away with teaching being a job. It has to be a calling. Um, it's with respect to AI.
Yeah.
Did you read the news yesterday or the day before? Sam Altman, he's the founder of ChatGPT. He said
Right.
something like, he was talking about energy. It takes a lot of energy to train a human. And he was
Wow.
saying that as a criticism, as a
Right.
defense that it takes a lot of energy to train AI. And the line is really chilling because
Yeah.
it reframes humans and even kids
Yep.
as inefficient systems.
Yep.
We can do better. All right. And education is not about optimizing humans or fitting them into what we think our desire, required outcomes are. It's about not optimizing, but honoring and loving them because this is what they need. This is what they've always need. So
Amen.
so
Amen.
we're trying to enter into those enormous forces that I just named. A lot of them have to do with money and power and
Yep.
ego.
Yep.
This era where technology and scale, everything has to scale and everything
Yeah.
has to be faster than human systems can even metabolize,
Right.
and that schools can, classes and campuses um, have to be places to slow things down. All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Um,
A word for everyone. I mean,
And
that's really
that's
it.
the story. That's Walter. That's the stories I'm telling. It's about slowing things down, and I'm telling these stories for a reason, not just because they're beautiful places. Although you can
Right.
read my stories to enter beautiful places, and I hope you
Yes.
will. And
Yes.
even if that's all you do, but I'm telling stories about these places because they're wild, and we
Yes.
connect with our wild and the wilderness in Pancho's kitchen, and the forest wisdom, and the tree stump circle that you can even have in your own field at your
Right.
school. I'm telling stories about emerging school models where kids are a force of nature and they have an
Yes.
equal say and in the direction of the school. So it's not that they're victims.
Yes. And when the people listening get a hold of that book and start reading and hearing what you're saying, the same passion they're hearing right now in this interview, they will get out of your stories. And I think maybe one of the greatest testaments to this work is that for all the experience and the insights and the way forward that you offer, it also is a storybook. And you can actually get lost in these stories and find your identity and your purpose and your way forward, living vicariously through you and the wonderful career you've had. We've just got a couple of minutes left, so I want to kind of flip it a little and say,
Hmm.
there's so much more to Stuart Grauer than all these wonderful things we've been talking about. So, what would you want to tell people listening? Something about you that they don't already know. They know the educator, they know the career. What's something outside of your educator self that you'd love to share with people about Stuart?
Well, I can go several different directions
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
Um, One of them is that I would want people to know because I'm telling all these stories, and
yeah,
it took years to write them all, but then I'm much more interested in listening than storytelling, and that's why the stories are written in an immersive way. You enter them and you can experience them as your own Grand Canyon or your own forest.
yes.
The other thing I think is fair to share
Hmm.
is that I work really, really hard. That
Hmm.
I'm putting everything
Yeah,
into the teaching that I do and the writing that I do and the
yeah,
surfing that I do, and
yeah,
it's all so immersive for me in real life that it
yeah,
really does become the same thing. It's all becomes interactive. But I don't know if there's an answer that I can provide short of immersing yourself and working pretty hard.
yeah. And that is, and I'll just say this as an aside, I'm picking up this kind of cultural narrative in the last year or two about hard work, and that it's somehow a myth or it's something being sold to you that you shouldn't believe. And, we're both here to tell anybody listening, hard work is the key. If you love your work and you're totally immersed in your work, then the hard work will just come and you will embrace it. And that's how you have impact.
Yeah, and I think also, Walter, that's where this work-life balance comes in, not work-life separation, but
Right.
work-life integration, because you can work so hard that you start ignoring certain parts of your real self. So your
Yes.
real teacher definitely needs to be really working hard, but also needs to be integrating the natural world and your listening and your relationships and your connection to yourself and your spirituality and that of others and of the natural world. All of these things, a beautiful integration. I know as a teacher, the hardest, trickiest thing I ever encountered was the idea of digression,
Yeah.
because you have the curriculum that supposes it, but then you have these students, teens. I've always taught teens, and they're saying things, and I've frequently not known how far out on a limb to let them go, and they think they're getting away with murder because they know they're kind of digressing, and yet their true interest and curiosity is unspooling. So I've
Yeah.
probably been less strict than some of the other great teachers that I know
Yeah.
in reeling in these digressions. Uh,
It's so true. And it's all part of the growing and the evolving and realizing our full potential and leaving a legacy. So I can only say, Stuart, and I want to say it while we're live and talking to your audience, it's such an honor to know you. It's such an honor to be with you in publishing The Way to Pacho's Kitchen, coming out next month. So we're excited. We're building up the anticipation. We're looking forward to the release. And this interview will be a way of saying to everyone, we're coming. It's been a wait. It's a lot of work, but it's happening. And we're excited to publish it next month.
oh, shucks, it was nothing.